The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. Welcome to the first edition of Comfortably Zoned in Alameda with Ziggy, the token Jew. How are you, everybody? Be prepared to learn about and experience the great city of Alameda, across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland. And I was fortunate enough to migrate from New York and spent the first 20 years of my life missing what my uncle told me was the greatest place to live on the face of the earth. And the first guest to the show to share that with me is another person who migrated from back east. And I can't tell you how much this guy means to me and the podcast network. We've been doing this 5 years, Jerry Feitelberg. And I'm privileged. Thank you for being my friend.
Well, the street goes both ways, Ralph. And thank you for being my friend, and thank you for having me on the podcast. It's always a pleasure to do the podcast with you because, as you know, we do them unscripted, and whatever comes into our conscious brain at the time is what we discuss.
Right. And, you know, a lot of times when you're on, the subject of Alameda comes up in drips and drabs informally. So if you would introduce yourself as an immigrant to Alameda. How did you come to live here? How did it come to be that you set up the best pharmacy in Alameda? You were the pharmacist of the year, not only in Alameda, not only in what am I saying here? I'm going to have to edit that one.
The whole state of California.
The whole state of California. Tell me how that came to be. But first, how did you choose Alameda, and what do you like most about it?
Well, there's a lot involved in that question, and I'll start. I got married in 1967, and I moved to Los Angeles in June of 1967, and I lived there for a number of years, and I worked in Santa Monica for many years, and I had a business partner. I was a minority partner in the drugstore down in Santa Monica, and several events happened that changed the course of my events. My partner lost his son in a plane crash in 1978, the PSA crash in San Diego, and he had been separated from he and his wife had been separated, but they came together for the funeral and whatever. But she had a lot going on in her life, and she admitted to me that he was cooking the books, and I had to sue him. So I sued him in 1978, and then we settled up in 1979. And I had been active in pharmacy affairs for a number of years. And in 1975, I had been at a convention in San Diego, and I met this fellow who had a couple stores in San Francisco, and we became fast friends. And we came up to San Francisco to visit him. They came down to LA to visit with me. His brother was a divorce attorney, very competent attorney. And so when it came for dissolution of the partnership, I hired this attorney. He flew down to LA and he negotiated the deal where I sold out my interest in the drugstore to my former partner. But he had a an accountant that he used, and they put together pro forma packages so that you can go to the bank and get some money. And so I was working in Encino at the time, but I think I came up to the Bay Area, and I learned that Alameda Drug was for sale. And I looked at it, and I got the numbers, and I with the help of these two gentlemen, the lawyer and the accountant, I made a bid on the business, and they accepted it. And we closed escrow, and I took over on December 1st, 1979. So I moved up to Alameda. I've lived in Alameda since December 1st, 1979, which is 44 years. So a long time resident of Alameda. So that's how I got to come up to the Bay Area. And I owned a drugstore for 25 years. It was up until 2004. Sold it to the Long's drugstore chain at that time. Long's was diagonally across the street on Santa Clara, and they purchased it. My wife was undergoing cancer treatment at the time, and I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2004. So it was the right time to sell, to just go enjoy our lives, how much time we had left. And unfortunately, my wife passed away in June of 2008. But I've been cancer-free for 18 plus years now. So that's the good news. And when I was living in LA, I used to have to commute from Woodland Hills to Santa Monica. And taking the freeway, you never know what you're going to find. So I used to take Topanga Canyon down to Coast Highway, and then Coast Highway to the store in Santa Monica. And I did that for I worked as an employee, then as an owner of the store. So I would say I was probably doing that for about 12 years, I think, doing that. It's a tough drive. And my wife did not like LA. It was too spread out. She was spending half the day driving around doing errands, and she wanted out of LA. And so when the opportunity came up, we looked at Alameda, said this place looks pretty nice. We went. We probably had a few breakfasts at Oli's Waffle Shop. We read the Alameda Times-Star, which was owned by Abe Kaufman at the time, many, many years ago. And we used I forgot which real estate agent we used, and they found us. We found us a place in Alameda that we liked. And you have to remember, in the 80s, interest rates on the houses were 12 to 13 or 14%. Well, we found this townhouse. It was under 10%, so we made a bid on it, and the bid was accepted, and we've been living there ever since. So Alameda we liked it. We are, especially with our friends in San Francisco. We used to go out for dinner in San Francisco all the time. We used to go to MacArthur Park in San Francisco. We liked that a lot, and I would drive in after I closed the pharmacy. I would get there. They lived in San Francisco. It was easier for me to go from Alameda to downtown San Francisco than for them to go. They lived out on Monterey Heights near St. Francis Wood in San Francisco, and they had to take the streets in. We would get there faster than they did drive, even though they lived in San Francisco, and they didn't have that far to go. So, and we did that for many years. But what we liked about Alameda is that there's no freeway through Alameda. It's a bedroom community. It's a small community. When I came to Alameda, I got active, and I was in the Rotary for a while. Got to know all the people in Rotary, who the bankers were, who the doctors were, and that was a good thing. I did that for 2 or 3 years, and then just the fact that it's a small community, and I knew all my patients. We were on a first name basis, the weather in Alameda was certainly better than the weather in San Francisco, where my friends in San Francisco live. They're in the fog belt, and it's cold and nasty. And out here in Alameda, it'd be 70 degrees most of the time. You don't need air conditioning. There's very little. The only time there's really a lot of traffic is leaving Alameda in the morning or coming home at night. But during the day, you can drive everywhere over Alameda in just a few minutes. No real traffic problems other than the fact that the police have speed traps all over the city. But other than that, not too bad. That was kind of a lengthy discussion to that question.
Well, that's the way it's supposed to be. We're getting to know you, and I want to throw in a question. What's the spirit of the people like in Alameda as opposed to other places you've lived?
That's a good question. I found that, a lot of times, a lot of the people in Alameda go back, way, way back. They have lengthy histories. There are a lot of families that have lived in here forever. I don't want to name their names, but they have lengthy histories in Alameda. They liked living there. Their great grandfathers, their grandfathers, grandparents, parents have all lived in Alameda, and the problem that they have is that now is that a lot of the kids can't afford to live in Alameda, so they have to inherit the house or the residence where their folks lived. But Alameda, they have. Once you've been here for a while, it takes a while to get used to the people. But once you're here for a while and you're a long-time resident, you're part of the scenery. I found that to be. And all I know is that I just did the best I could to take care of the people that chose to use my pharmacy. And I got to know, you got to know a lot of the people. And I got to know a lot of the people that, everyone's going to get sick and someone's going to need pharmacy. And I had competition. I had two major chains. I had to deal with Long's, now CVS, had to deal with Walgreens. And so what I try to do is I try to take care of the people that needed more time, the older, sicker people, because the chains don't have time for them. If you go to the chain stores, you got to stand in line, whereas you go to an independent, they can call you anytime and you talk. They will talk to you. I always made time to talk to people, so that was the difference between me and a chain store.
Jerry, what are the major changes that you've seen happen in Alameda since you've been here? It's like 40 years. How are things the same, and how are they different?
Well, the population of Alameda has been fairly stable, but with the demise of the Alameda Naval Air Station, they're able to build. They're trying to develop that and put more housing in for people. How affordable it is, it remains to be seen. As you know, property is very, very expensive in Alameda, yet it's not as expensive as homes in the peninsula, in the Menlo Park area. If you were to buy some of the new townhouses that are being built on the base, I think they start at $1 million, $1.5 million. The same property in the peninsula would be $3 million. So, in terms of being able to afford something, it might be a little easier to buy something in Alameda, even though I'm rattling off $1 million like it's pocket change. It's still $1 million, huge amount of money.
Inheriting is always best.
Oh, absolutely.
Let me ask you this. Alameda was voted in a survey in the San Francisco Chronicle as the number one place to live. I think they talked about 30 different communities. Why is it that Alameda stood out in that article that we're both so proud to be Alamedans, having read that? What's the number one thing that stood out in that article as you read it that makes you proud that you chose Alameda?
Well, overall, it was the fact that we have a relatively small community, maybe 75, 80,000 people, and we don't have traffic. We don't have the traffic like they have on the peninsula. We have a nice community. We've had some development over the years to improve the ability to shop and have more of the money stay in town. But the weather is the best weather in the Bay Area. It's never too hot. It's never too cold, and you don't need air conditioning. And it's easy to get around. Parking could be better, but that's all over the Bay Area, especially in San Francisco. You can never find a place to park. But we're close to San Francisco. We're close to Oakland. We're close to a lot of the things that are going on. The biggest drive, the two biggest drives, if you want to see the 49ers play, you got to drive down to Santa Clara. Or if the Sharks are your hockey fan, you got to drive to San Jose. But for basketball and baseball, they're not that far from Alameda, and they're not that you can actually take the ferry to the baseball game in San Francisco, and you can take the ferry. I think the service is running to the Chase Center for the basketball games. And those make it easy, so you don't have to go out and drive. There's also ferry service from Alameda to San Francisco from the ferry station near the Naval Air Station, and they also have the ferry service from Harbor Bay Isle, and they're widely used, and it makes it easy for people to get into the city if you have to work in the city. So those are some of the advantages. It's not that far from the Bay Bridge. Well, and if you don't go in commute time, it's a little easier to get into the city if you have to go into the city. We're close to Berkeley.
9 minutes without a commute time. So we are close. And the scenic looking into the city, whereas when you're in San Francisco, it's sometimes tough to catch a good view, but Alameda is beautiful in terms of going down to the beach and just looking across the bay and seeing the San Francisco skyline, and it's great. It's a great city.
Yeah. One of the things that happened was Measure A, which was passed in 1973, 50 years ago. There was a time that they were ripping down homes and building motel-style apartment buildings, multi units, and then they passed Measure A and said that you can only have if you tear a place down, you had to have 2 units. You could do 2 units, not multi units. And it drove the developers crazy. They've been trying to get rid of it. It may have driven prices up, but if you live in Alameda, the homes, we have some very beautiful homes on the east side. We have the Gold Coast in near Grand Avenue, all those beautiful homes in there, and then we have livable homes all over. We have a relatively decent educational system. The schools aren't number 1 or number 2, but if the kids come from good families and they're motivated, they're going to do well. They're going to do well once they get to college and they get their sights on what they want to do for a living. So as far as improving things, there really aren't any real areas in the city where there are eyesores where you say we got to rip this stuff down. On I think it's on Buena Vista. The old Del Monte factory is being rehabbed into something, either housing or offices or whatever. They're working on that, and we have the they have the area Marina Village, which has been redeveloped. They put in the shopping center where the Target store is on the west end. So they've done things to upgrade the city, and as I said,
and they've kept it quaint to a certain extent. Yeah. Park Street and Webster are two different downtowns within a mile and a half from each other, and they both have their charm. I personally think that landlords are charging a little too much for commercial property, but that's the way it goes. Can't be perfect. Jerry,
no.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank you for your insight on the city, and this is the first of you are the first of many people we'll talk to in Alameda, and I'm excited about the prospect of doing this particular podcast, and I'm very thrilled that you were my first guest.
Well, that's quite an honor. I really appreciate it. I do hope to have lunch with you before the baseball season starts. As Isla improves in her recovery from her accident, and the baseball season starts in less than a month. Today is the 2nd, and I think it starts on the 30th. So it's coming up.
There is no more time than this that we're both being avid baseball fans. We're blessed. The thought of another season, the excitement of a pennant race, all these things are very exciting about the days of spring training, and I can't wait to have that lunch.
Oh yeah, well your Mets are looking good. They've got some great pitching. The A's are an unknown factor. They made a lot of youngsters coming up, so it's going to be a crapshoot for the A's. The Giants hope to improve on last year, so those are things we'll be talking about. In the old days they called it the Hot Stove League. Talk about what's coming up talk about the players and what's going to happen in the upcoming season, and that should be interesting. So it's. The other thing that we have to be concerned about is are the A's going to stay in Oakland? At the moment, it's up in the air. We just don't know. And remember, it's so much up to the city of Oakland, and they lose the team. They lose more than just money. They lose the prestige of having a Major League Baseball franchise.
And you hurt kids and elderly people like us, basically.
Yeah.
And it becoming a corporate game anyway is like icing on the cake. It's these are tough times, but we'll try to get through them. And I can't wait to have lunch with you, Jerry. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. First edition of Comfortably Zoned in Alameda with Ziggy, the token Jew. That's me. Talk soon, everybody. Jerry.
Yes, sir.
I value your friendship. I tell you that on a regular basis.
Yep.
Love you.
Okay. Well, as I said, it's a two-way street. Just be well.
Beautiful. As we would say, sei gesund.
Yeah.
Be good. Be good, Jerry. Thank you for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Zeke Tycho kind of the weak link of it all. But I always have fun talking to Jerry.
Well,
Adios.
thank you. Bye-bye.
And happy trails. Bye-bye, Jerry.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.